Welcome to part one of a two-part Tinfoil Friday. We're going to start out, we had no idea where this was going to go. We start out, as you'll see in this episode, with some video of an Amazon rainforest tribe member identifying a gray alien as a spiritual being in their culture. We start talking about all kinds of ancient cultures and their descriptions of grays, reptilians, intergalactical federations, underground civilizations,
Star people,
ant people,
and terrestrial, what we would call terrestrial aliens, and extraterrestrial.
and at some point it's gonna cut and we're gonna have a part two, and that's gonna get even crazier. So stick around. This is MKUSUAL. It's like MK Ultra, but more normal.
Like, subscribe, share, please, thank you.
We're on an alien kick this week, as we are every week. How you doing, Nick?
I'm good.
Yeah. I think this video, you've probably seen this video. We're gonna watch it. It's real short. And then we're gonna discuss the implications and some similar stories and stuff. This kind of took UFO world by storm. This is a podcast where a guy is interviewing a tribe member from South America. I'm just gonna throw it on here. This will be the only audio visual for the episode.
E alienígena não tem.
Como?
Alienígena.
Ela diz? O que é?
Nunca, essa palavra você nunca ouviu falar? Alienígena.
Alienígena, não. Isso chama-se MKUSUAL.
Isso aqui?
Sim.
MKUSUAL.
MKUSUAL.
Sério?
MKUSUAL. MKUSUAL é um que mora debaixo da terra.
É, eu falei, esse aí.
Que se virou formiga hoje, que nós chamamos Una. Que é uma formiga grande, chama-se MKUSUAL.
Que essa formiga também é muito perigosa, né, Boina? Se as pessoas ficam mexendo com ela demais, ela leva o espírito da pessoa para debaixo da terra também. Para voltar tem que ser um pajé bem bom.
São seres que pode aparecer em luz divina, com a luz do Nishipan. São seres que a gente pode ter o contato, que moram debaixo da terra.
Mayushibu.
Ant people.
Ant people, Una.
Also,
They live underground. And to be clear here, just to explain it, they showed him a picture of a gray alien
yeah.
and then told him the word alien and tried to describe what an alien is, our understanding of them. And then his response was, I've never heard of that. However,
He's never heard the word.
he's never heard the word, but he does recognize that creature, and they live underground, and they became an ant, and they take your spirit underground, which to me sounds like an out-of-body experience, which a lot of abductions are out-of-body experiences.
Yes.
And he mentions the light of Nishipan, which I'm going to look up.
Yeah.
I feel like that could be. There's so much stuff related to UFOs about like light. Oh wow. Okay, that took me to a National Security Agency.gov article on communication with extraterrestrial intelligence. The words light of Nishipan. Wow. Oh, it's missing. That is highly bizarre. I googled light Nishipan. It took me to the NSA. Says it does not include Nishipan, but there's something in the freaking document or feed. It's an unclassified document from the NSA. It was unclassified in 2004, FOIA case number 41472 by Mr. Lambros de Calamajas. We are not alone in the universe is the first sentence of it. That's very interesting. We might need...
How many pages?
It is 9 pages, but a lot of it's references. So it's about 7 or 8 pages. I'm going to save this. We're going to go through this in a future episode. That's a lucky find. Dude, that's kind of nuts to type in this random tribal word this guy said and get this 9-page PDF from the National Security.
He was a Greek-American cryptologist, linguist, and musician. Interesting.
A lot of these guys are polymaths, man.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that raises the question. I mean, a lot of the idea of a crypto-terrestrial, which I believe was a Jason Offutt idea.
What would you call it? A being?
A being?
A being, or a critter. I don't want to be rude.
A critter?
I don't want to be
rude
rude
to the aliens.
Yeah.
I am racist against aliens.
Well,
I think they're little sneaky fuckers. He even says they take your spirit underground. That doesn't sound good.
the
said they're
lady
very
said,
dangerous.
Yeah, dangerous, but you can communicate with them, and as long as you don't mess with them too much, they didn't seem too worried. But if you go messing with them, and I don't know.
I have my whole life.
She seemed kind of chill with it, but he was like,
no.
He was like, nah.
She'd probably be messing with the ant people.
Yeah.
She'd probably be the blue hair astrology Ouija board person of the tribe. And he's like, just stop messing with the ant people. I tried to warn you. I find this insanely interesting to watch. You always hear stories about this. You hear stories where, I mean, shit, we just did one earlier this week. Go check out The Legend of Ibu Gogo. It's about the Hobbit people.
Yeah, undiscovered. There is still a lot to learn about this world.
There's so much to learn about this world. And, the more I think about it, I think Ibu Gogo, which are little Hobbit people who probably live in Indonesia, I think that might be a way to red pill people on the idea that aliens could be from Earth.
Yeah.
Because if you believe these little monkey Stone Age people can live in Indonesia,
Undiscovered mostly.
what about a more advanced race of little people?
Right.
Who are about 3 feet tall? What if the...
You can phase out of our dimension.
Yeah, if they want. They say that about Bigfoot too. I think that might be a way to red pill people that this Earth is so huge.
Right.
We've mapped more of the moon than we have the ocean, percentage-wise. We definitely don't know a lot about underground unless we're getting oil. We don't just go down there poking. Some people build, some people build underground bunkers and stuff, but it's not that deep. And we know there are caverns and stuff that go super deep. If you've ever watched the Skinwalker Ranch show, a lot of that has to do with them discovering anomalies underground. They'll hit and get a piece of rare metal that shouldn't be there.
The missing 411, I always bring that up, but there is a correlation between cavern systems and these types of...
Oh, yeah.
Those types of anomalous disappearances.
There's a very famous picture of that a lot of people have said they believe are real, that are real experiences. And I'm not sure if I can find it off the bat. I didn't think it was going to go necessarily in this exact direction, but it's of a living... gray alien coming out of a basement in Mexico. If I can find it, I'll throw it up. It might have been buried, honestly, because it kind of hit the web real fast. I know Whitley Strieber talked about it, and then some of this stuff is hard to find. They also do this shit like these mummies that obscures.
Yes.
This is how weird Google is. Okay, so I type in gray alien Mexico. There should be 20,000 images of this thing and that thing, and there's literally only one page.
15.
But then I type in this word from this guy in this tribe, and I get a freaking National Security Agency document.
Yeah.
There's something going on with the way this shit is tabbed and can search, but that's beyond it. I just find the parallels here really interesting.
Yeah, you want to talk about this kind of the oral tradition from some native tribes.
Yeah, we can get into that too, because this isn't the only. I guess this is Trust Native People Week on MKUSUAL, but this alone, I'll just state, is so interesting to me because I have come to believe these things live on Earth. They're not from space, and that abductions are something to do with out-of-body experiences, and that they're not always physical in the pure sense of the term. So, and this light thing, sounds a lot like abduction stuff, like a heavenly light, a light that moves and has substance and can grab things and do things. It's just the amount of like hits and parallels he has to like modern abduction research is really freaking fascinating, and he only has his own culture.
Where's the video? It sounded like Portuguese, so I'm assuming Brazil.
Yes, I think that's it actually.
Okay.
So hat tip to that podcast. It looks, so they are making waves this week. Holy shit. I don't even know. That guy seemed to know the language too, which was crazy.
Right.
So my immediate thought when I saw this, because he calls them the people who became ants, is the Hopi in North America have their own ant people, which oddly enough is the legend of Anunnaki. A-N-U, which is funny because he calls them Una.
Which is just backwards.
It's backwards. He calls it Una, which is their word for ant, and then the Hopi have Anu and the Naki, so ant people. Not to be confused with Anunnaki, the whole Sumerian thing.
Okay.
Have you ever heard that? Yeah.
No.
The people who were the Babylonian gods.
Well, I know that story. The Sumerian.
It's just words that sound the same.
It's the same. Well, I guess
it's the exact same word. It's literally the exact same word and everything. But two different cultures separated by thousands of years in an ocean.
This is why language is really interesting to me, because there is like that's fascinating because, well, to me that there are like stories of the Egyptians being in the Grand Canyon and stuff. So like people from that area maybe somehow got over here and the language came with them.
And they became the Hopi.
Yeah. And I don't, maybe on a much older timeline too. Anyway.
We're going to do stuff about ancient America. I have a book in particular I read in college that I just dug out from a box. At one point we're doing an episode on it. One of my pet peeves, I love alternative history stuff like that, like we're the Egyptians in America. And what makes me so sad, and one of my favorite podcasts talk about this too, they're in Australia. What makes me so sad is with this, we have such a bad history with like indigenous people or whatever, that like it kind of blocks like legitimate scientific inquiry into very interesting things like who got here first, where did they come from, because we've treated them so bad that we have so much like white guilt that we kind of just, they say they sprung from the ground, right? Like that's a typical Native American legend is like, we came from the ground, we come from this earth.
That's
right?
The same. I mean, that's the biblical story that Adam was made from clay.
Right.
And here's another language thing. In human, the root is dirt or soil, earth.
Interesting. I think Adam means soil too.
Hummus?
Or no, man, yeah.
Adam means man.
Right.
But human, the root is dirt or soil or clay.
Whoa.
So like,
whoa.
the story.
But I guess
that's like a universal story. So that's.
I guess what I mean is like, we don't want to just, because if you start saying that the Egyptians, the Chinese and stuff, that's where these tribes come from. A lot of people say there's a lot of similarities between like ancient China and like South American tribes, especially on that coast. If you start throwing that out there, you're essentially called racist because you're like stepping on their own stories and stuff. But we know these people didn't just appear out of nowhere. You know what I mean? Like they had to come from somewhere. So you can't, it's considered fringe to go into these ideas that there's like a mix of cultures across oceans.
Yes.
Because you're doing like further harm to these people. And the Aboriginals are the same way. In Australia, like you essentially, it's very politically incorrect to speculate on like, where did these people come from? Who are they related to? Because if you talk to them, they're like, we've always been here forever. Well, we're pretty sure that's not true. You know what I mean? Like but you can't get into it too much without being like offensive, which to me is really sad.
There is like a sensitivity required, and then also there is just a deduction that can happen where both things can't be true at the same time.
Right.
There is probably an origin that goes past that story, makes that story untrue, while in the context of how they experience their lives, it is true for them. So you're not denying it.
Right.
You're just approaching it from, I
And
don't know.
there's a lot in there I can get into, but let's go back to the Hopi.
Yes.
The Hopi have the same word but in reverse. Una, they have Anu. And these creatures, the Anunnaki, no connection to the Sumerian Anunnaki, supposedly helped the Hopi survive during 2 great cataclysms by sheltering the Hopi underground. These beings are described as thin with large heads and live in subterranean cities. That's a gray. If you've ever seen like art of the Hopi, my computer's dying. If you've ever seen art of Hopi ant people, it looks like they got big old eyes. Here's one little bitty ant guy. Here's one. I'll throw this one up.
Yeah.
They got big. Like the most notable thing. Look, man, people didn't learn how to draw till like 1500. I think about this all the time. How all art before like a certain, like within like a really small amount of time is kind of like shit. But like, I don't mean to call this shit. I'm just saying.
But maybe it's also like, because those are found on like cave walls or like on the side of a cliff. So like,
they could be pre-cataclysm.
Yeah, and you also like would draw in that style to preserve the symbol.
I'm going way far afield. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so boom, you have a connection between the Hopi and the South American tribe automatically, which is very suspicious. And the Sumerians.
To me, a linguistic connection to the Sumerian myth.
I mean, that's...
or story, whatever you want to call it. Anyway.
So you start adding up evidence. All right. So here's the Brazil. Okay, so I believe this is the tribe we just saw. The MKUSUAL people of the Amazon, Brazil, Venezuela, Guyana. They have legends of an underground world where giants, sometimes interpreted as alien-like beings, reside. And then they have this paradise-like environment in inner Earth, which is very similar to what people have described down in Antarctica. Now we have this new evidence through this podcast where the guy identifies a gray alien called the Ant People. I believe this is... Okay, the Hindu Nagas. Hinduism is so fascinating to me.
Yes.
It's so old that it's like there's something there.
It's like such a complex worldview too.
The Vedas are so ancient.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even know where to begin, but it's just mind blowing. In Hindu and Buddhist mythology, the Nagas are serpent-like, sometimes human-like beings who reside in subterranean realms, such as Patala or Nagaloka. Some descriptions portray them as highly advanced and possessing technology or wisdom beyond human understanding.
Yeah.
Reptile people confirmed. More reptile people. Australian Aboriginal reptilian gods. Some Aboriginal tribes speak of the Mimis, ancient thin and long-limbed spirits who retreated into rock crevices. Other myths reference reptilian-like beings that live underground and occasionally surface to interact with humans.
Have you ever seen that movie Year One? Or no, not Year One. God dang it, what's it called?
I'm getting Dolce bass vibes here.
Anyway.
Oh no, keep going. What's it about?
It's a Will Ferrell movie, and now I can't remember what it's called.
If you figure it out, let me know.
Land of the something? Land of the Lost?
Oh, Land of the Lost?
Yeah.
I used to watch that TV show.
Okay.
And there are like upright dinosaur people, right?
The way they portray it is like he has this crystal and he goes into this underground thing and it's like these little big eye lizard people. I felt like that movie was kind of like soft disclosure vibes.
Oh, interesting. Some predictive programming, which we have an episode on. You can go back and look at.
Yeah.
There was a very famous, I don't remember if it was Time Magazine. There was a very famous, I remember as a kid in the 90s, and it was very shocking. If I find, okay, I found him. And this, you will find this in museums sometimes. They put together this like speculative, oh, here's more. This speculative kind of scientific model of what dinosaurs would look like if they went down our same evolutionary branch and they developed walking on two legs with, you know, thumbs and hands, and I have the pictures of these things. Are very spooky, but I mean, these look like this almost seems to me like soft disclosure.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because I remember this being all over when I was like a kid into early adolescence.
Yep. Yo.
That's just the FBI beating down our door. This to me looks straight up like descriptions of aliens.
If you spent millions of years living in cave, you knew. Let's say this theory is true, that
What are caves? Warm and wet?
They protect you from cataclysms, like a giant meteor that destroyed every other living thing on the earth that you witnessed and survived, and then became.
And notice in the legends it says they
cave lizard
became
people.
ants.
Yes.
So that had to have been knowledge passed from the Una or the Anu to the people, that we once were like you, we once lived underground.
Yes.
And then when a cataclysm comes, they say, we're going to take pity on you, come into our cave world. You go down, it's super advanced, it's amazing, it's fertile. You're witnessing an older civilization, and then they're like, okay, but cataclysm done, go start over. I don't know, man. And people surviving in caves, I mean, Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, it's a common human story that you survive a cataclysm by going to a cave, or you restart in a cave.
The Aristotle's cave as like a symbolic journey of, you know.
Here's another one, the Duro and Tiro of the Shaver mystery. Though originally popularized by Richard Shaver in the 1940s, some of the mythos align with older Native American traditions. He spoke of the Diro, malevolent underground dwellers, and the Tiro, the benevolent counterparts, both of whom had advanced technology and could influence the surface world. That to me seems like soft disclosure.
North America? Did it say where in North America?
No, it did not. He was just popularizing, like, I would take that as kind of like a North American version of like the Lord of the Rings, maybe, or something. You know what I mean? Like, you use real mythology, but you Mesoamerica, the Mayan Xibalba. The Mayans believed in Xibalba, an underground realm inhabited by powerful godlike beings who manipulated reality. Another common UFO thing. Some interpretations describe them as tall, pale-skinned figures with elongated skulls and great knowledge of cosmic forces. The tall whites, anybody? The freaking spindly grays?
Yeah.
The Chain people, sky beings in South America. The Chain, a lesser-known indigenous group in Bolivia and Argentina, have legends of tall, luminous beings who live in underground cities, occasionally emerging to interact with them and sometimes abducting them. And then, of course, you have the Sumerian Anunnaki in Mesopotamia. The Sumerians spoke of Anunnaki, powerful deities or beings who have ruled from underground and had control of human civilization, suggesting they were extraterrestrial in origin.
It said something interesting, not strictly indigenous.
The Sumerians?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they're considered like the beginning of civilization.
But who is
They
it
would've-
talking about? The people or the Anunnaki?
Well,
Because indigenous would imply like derived from Earth, so...
I believe they might be referring to the way this legend's been passed down, because a lot of this was popularized by Zecharia Sitchin.
Oh, they're referring to the...
Sitchin, yeah. So I think they were referring to certain interpretations of their myths.
Okay.
which we can't really. One of my little side passions, I like to listen to stuff by anthropologists who talk about like the beginnings of religion and stuff, and a lot of it goes back to Babylon and Sumeria. Now, those are the underground beings. The Hopi also have the Kachina spirits, which are like described as having large heads, elongated eyes, small bodies, resembling modern descriptions of gray aliens. These are different than the
Ant people.
Yeah, than the Anu. They're connected to space travel because the Kachinas are called star people, or beings from other worlds. We then have the Zuni, star beings. The Zuni call them star beings. Some descriptions of the beings are interpreted as having slender bodies, large eyes, smooth skin, also reminiscent of gray aliens. The Aboriginals, again, they have their underground lizard people, but they also have the Wandjina spirits, depicted in ancient Australian rock art as ancestral spirits with large, round heads, big, dark eyes. These figures bear a striking resemblance to gray aliens. Some theories suggest Wandjina spirits were beings who descended from the sky to create life or bring knowledge, with their arrival tied to creation myths. Famous one here, the Dogon in West Africa. There's a very famous In Search of episode. These are people in Mali who have long held detailed astronomical knowledge about the Sirius star system, including the existence of Sirius B, a star invisible to the naked eye, but confirmed by modern astronomy only in the 20th century. They knew about it for centuries before. According to the Dogon mythology, beings called the Nomo, amphibious or serpent-like figures, came from Sirius system to share knowledge with the Gogo. It keeps going on. You have the Lakota Sioux. They have their own star people who interact with people. They often include glowing or radiant forms and messages of peace or warnings, which is very common in abductions. The Mayans have the sky gods and star travel, complex cosmological beliefs involving sky gods who travel from the heavens. Some carvings and glyphs, such as the famous lid on the tomb of Pakal the Great, have been interpreted as ancient astronauts. The Pakal tomb lid was often said to depict Pakal seated in a spacecraft. And the Inuit, the, Eskimos, they have sky people, beings from other realms who visit Earth. Some of these are said to take humans on journeys through the stars into other worlds. I want to point out that Europe wasn't so sure that stars weren't just like holes poked in the sky.
Yes.
Until like a few hundred years ago. So the idea of traveling to a star is a very modern idea that these ancient cultures have. And they all have similar descriptions. They have descriptions of reptilians or these freaking grays, dude. I think this might be one of the best threads of evidence that this stuff's real.
Yeah. Also, the mantids, that kind of made me think. Ooh. The ant people made me think of the mantids. And that like makes sense because it would. You know what I'm saying?
Ooh, yeah.
But I don't know the there's claims that there are hybrid human and other species, but are there other like gray and mantid hybrids?
Right.
Like reptilian and whatever.
I never thought of that.
Like, do they be fucking anyone but us?
Do the reptilians be fucking the grays?
Are they only fucking us? Or what?
I mean, the question is, what are we, I guess? Because, and I think it's kind of interesting that...
I mean, we're kind of hairy, upright primate legs, so I feel like we're on the Bigfoot tree.
We're in the Bigfoot tree. And then you got the dinosaur people tree, which might be the grays, which are definitely the reptilians.
Yeah.
And then you got the mantid.
Terrestrial reptilians.
Right.
Because where do they come? Do you know where they say the, like, Draco and all those?
I can't give you, like, the scientific what star
There's, like, a star system.
I think there is a star system that we call Draco. Not an astronomer.
Yeah.
However, I don't know, man. There's just so many. There's almost too much stuff to point out. I mean,
right.
Some of these beings could be, like that one culture had the bad ones and then their good counterparts.
Yep.
People nowadays talk about the Intergalactical Federation and how there's bad ones and good ones. I guess that's also just a common thing. There'd be bad angels, good angels.
That would be someone's experience of humanity. If they came here, they'd be like, oh, there's some pretty chill ones. And
right. The idea that they're
Not
from
chill ones.
the idea that they're from underground, but also there's this connection to the sky. I happen to think the sky thing is a lie. But if they're floating around in their UFOs, like, you're gonna say they came from the sky. They're gonna come and go in their craft. You know, it's a hovering craft that can only come from one direction. They probably don't want you to know where they live. There is a UFO connection to mountains.
yeah.
I just think the evidence is...
For all of these stories to come up independently across time without interacting with each other, supposedly. And that's the official... That's using the logic of like the official... these peoples didn't have boats to travel.
Yeah, and to share the
go
story.
to wherever, to go from Brazil to Alaska, Australia, you know, like whatever. You could like... So these story...
Yeah.
For them all to come up independently, impossible.
Or say...
And it's also like you're denying their direct experience by like choosing to go with the official narrative. Like they are telling you this is their experience.
Yeah, and even I use words
And
like
it's not a
myth.
work. It's not a work of fiction. They
No.
didn't do this to, you know. It's a verbal history of an experience that they've had.
Yeah, reality.
Throughout time.
Their natural experience. I think it's undisputed. I think this is one of the best. This is one of the best pieces of evidence that like Greys are real, possibly reptilians. Even if, let's say humanity is way, way older. That's a whole other topic. Let's say we're like millions and millions of years old, and that we've lived through multiple cataclysms, and we keep getting wiped out, and we keep coming back, and only like the biggest myths survive. Okay, maybe that's why they all have the same myth. Maybe there's something fundamentally human about a time in the way past when we were interacting with these things more on an open level. And then a cataclysm happens, they save us, and then we reset. And they're fine with that. To us, to them, it'd be like when a wildfire happens, it wipes out like the coyotes or some shit, and then there's too many deer, so the coyotes eat really good for a while, then they get overpopulated, and then there's not enough deer, and then like they might just see us as another part of nature on what they see as their planet.
Yeah.
So they'll save us when we're endangered, but they really don't give a shit about if we're killing people in a war. Or
If they are living safely underground, they're surviving cataclysms. They've kept a history. Like, but if we, you know,
if we were to see that,
we lose history. We not only the destruction of a cataclysm, but we just would like history would be gone. The story would have a big fucking hole in it. And so you could just you would start the story over.
You start over, you might save very fundamental things. Like there are sky people.
Right.
There was a cataclysm. You might, there's a line, and I don't think I really believe it, but you remember the Adam and Eve book that the CIA had?
Yeah.
Okay. There's a line either at the beginning of that book or somewhere in it where the guy says there's a cataclysm coming. It's going to wipe out all physical evidence of this civilization, but we will restart. And he says something like, Zeus will be forgotten, but Jesus will join the likes of Orion. And the way I took that was that these events are so cataclysmic that like Zeus would represent like an older civilization's mythology.
Yeah.
So like that's not even important enough to survive in memory. But like Jesus, for instance, is like the current religion, the biggest religion on earth by far. And so he would become the new fuzzy memory And I'm a Christian. I'm not saying I believe that. I'm just saying, like, but the idea is that these events are so big that essentially, you know, like Michelangelo, gone. Leonardo da Vinci, gone. The idea that atomic weapons existed probably stays because it's such a big deal in our modern world, but it becomes something like those Hindu scriptures about
fireballs in the sky.
Right.
Yeah.
You kind of just like lop off everything but the most recent biggest shit.
It'll be told as myth, like the hammer of Shiva, or
right. That's what he meant by Jesus becomes Osiris or whatever. I think it is fascinating. But yeah, drop some comments below. What other connections do you see? This stuff's endless. I could sit here and talk about this for 3 hours. There's just too much here. There's too much here. Even the light, you get into the light, the divine light of that thing that he mentioned. Where are these things really from? Is the underground of paradise? Is this all a big lie? They even admit that they take your spirits. I don't know, man. Any final thoughts or points of discussion?
ChatGPT brought up, it's important to approach such topics with cultural sensitivity and recognize that interpretations may vary among different communities. I keep going back to like the language and translation and how, like, okay, so I work at a French restaurant. All the owners speak French, and there is lost in translation that happens, but we can like talk with our hands and point at things and like, you know, understand each other. So that's like
yeah,
you know, some things are lost, but there is like a way, even with, you know, things lost in translation, it ends up being why things are told as myth. That's why they sound like simplified versions of archetypal characters instead of there were, you know what I'm saying? Like
instead of the reality.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the truth of the story is in there.
It's in there.
And like these native peoples have oral traditions. It ends up being told in the same way because the details are irrelevant in some sense of the word irrelevant. You don't need all of the details for the story to be told through generations for thousands of years. And
you don't even have to be that disconnected.
yeah.
Just last night, I watched a thing about a CIA document that looked into poltergeist activity.
Okay.
And they studied two families. One, I believe, in a very conservative rural part of Mexico where like Pentecostalism is big. And one in like New Jersey. And there was the exact same shit happening in these houses. And one family dealt with it like with their preacher and all this stuff. And the other family was the people they reached out to were convinced that poltergeist activity was caused by like latent psychic abilities in the child.
Oh.
And so I didn't get super into it, but my point was that this document basically is a comparative analysis of the same phenomenon. And you're talking Mexico and the U.S., same time period, largely the same culture, both Christian cultures, but the just vastly different ways that the Americans went at it versus the like conservative Mexican people.
They both saw chairs like slide out from the table.
Yeah, a book flies across the room.
Book falls off the shelf. Fan starts spinning or something.
One went demons, calling the priest. The other ones were like, let's study the child's scientific psychic. You know what I mean? Like, but at the heart of it, so if you read those two stories separately, it was like the document's called like a comparative analysis or something of poltergeist activity. But like, and I would love to dig into it in the future. But at the heart of it, it was about how these two cultures, which are not really separated by that much time and space, could look at the same supernatural activity and just come to wildly different. They call them the ant people, we call them grays. We call it abduction, they call it taking your spirit to the underground. It's kind of sounds like the same thing.
Yeah. It's like the game of telephone.
If you are a dinosaur person, please drop us a shout out.
Thug Life Certified.